8 billion people, and I'll repeat, 8 billion. That's how many people Benjamin von Wong's work is looking to engage. Not followers, not social media impressions, but people who can stop, look, feel, and do something about the world they're living in. He's an artist and activist, although he might push back on the label a little bit, and rightfully so. I think people who are extraordinary and doing extraordinary things often don't fit in a box. But what's really interesting about Ben is that he started out with a mining engineering degree that he acquired from McGill University, and then went on to build this central installation for a UN convening around the global plastics resolution in Nairobi. And then in between, we're looking at 168,000 straws. We're looking at a Guinness World Record. And we're looking at several brand campaigns with Dell, Nike, and even Starbucks. And now he's building a community here in New York centered around addressing social, economic, and environmental anxieties and driving collective action to tackle them. There's a question that I've wanted to ask Ben for quite a long time. And it's not whether or how he does it all. It's whether he thinks his work and the works of others like him is working. Ben, welcome to The Art of Impact.
Starting out with little small questions, huh?
Super small. And you know, it's funny because when we were coming here today to record this podcast, I was thinking we're going to be missing something.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
What are we missing?
We're missing tea.
Tea. Oh, no.
It's funny. It's just by coincidence that every time we have a ceremonial tea, Ben and I, whenever we happen to have the chance to meet up here in New York, we really set the stage with the intro. And I think probably the most surprising thing for people that know your work is this mining engineering degree that you acquired many, many moons ago.
Yeah.
So starting with how you got into creating these monumental works that have moved millions of people, you've opened their minds, you've opened their hearts, you've really raised a lot of awareness around some of the largest crises of our time. Let's go back a few years to getting that degree at McGill, to working in that field. Is there something from those years in mining engineering that you're carrying forward now into your work?
Yeah. I think growing up, I wasn't a very ambitious person. I think I wanted to play video games and be a truck driver or something to that effect. And I went to university because that was, I guess, what you did after high school. I was a very mediocre student. I was not a very good engineer all throughout university, nor at my job where I worked for 3.5 years. So what did I learn? What did I take away from that moment in time? I was doing long-term mine planning. So how do you get material out of the ground that's like a geologist sends you like a little model and says, this is what we think is underground because they poked a bunch of holes and played connect the dots. And then you spend 3 months building a bunch of assumptions, mine shafts going in, and then you make a calculation on like how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and how much money someone's going to make. And then at that point you submit it and they come back and they're like, this is what the model looks like now because we poked more holes and we've connected more dots and it looks completely different, and you start over. And at some point, you just decide that, you know what, that's good enough. We're just going to go and explore. That was at that time, that was what I was doing. And so that has very little to do with what I do today. But the act of taking something really complex and operating with best available information and breaking it down into its component parts is something that I do think that I carry in with every single project that I do. You know, all these projects, regardless of how complex that they may seem, how many hundreds of people that they may involve to create, all get broken down into smaller individual parts. And there are some like central truisms, the same way that like the laws of physics apply to every engineering project. There are some central truisms around creation and collaboration that I think I apply in a very focused manner. But otherwise, no, not much.
Not much. Okay. Yeah. So 3.5 years passed. What was that moment where you're like, I'm moving on from this? What's your initial thought? Oh, I'm going to become an artist.
I think people get really caught up on trying to find the one thing they want to do. For me, what was really clear was the one thing I didn't want to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't want to do, which was sit at a bigger desk earning more money 10 years from now. And it's like, if you know that is the thing you don't want to do, then how are you going to get out of that as quickly as possible? And me, as someone who had no dependence, I quit within like 2 weeks of that thought. I was just like, oh, problem, let's solve it. I quit. I came up with a story for my parents. I said I was going to do a GMAT and I was going to go get an MBA. It didn't happen. I mean, I did the GMAT part, but I never applied for school. So I never ended up with an MBA. And I just kind of tripped and fell into being an artist. I took a sabbatical that never ended. And at the time, I did have a little bit of a photography thing going. I had 10,000 followers on Facebook as a photographer pre-algorithm on Facebook pages. And so that was a glorious moment in time where social media had not
was organic.
Yeah, it was organic and blown up and like
manipulated,
caused genocides and destroyed the world. Yeah, this is a moment in time, I think, where like people were connected through their passions, through their hobbies. Groups are like finding and inspiring. So it's like photography was just getting open sourced from being this like occult white man thing that you did in a dark room to like suddenly like people were just sharing all this information available online, making tutorials. And I was part of that initial wave. And when I wrote it. Yeah. I've never really quite caught the wave. Like I'm not an A-list celebrity by any means in any way, but I've always been like a solid, like
I need to stop you right there. I think you're certainly well known and achieved a lot of success. So
within the world of the global plastic treaty negotiation at the United Nations, I am the biggest artist, but that's a very tiny vertical of a very narrow mountain.
It's a widening vertical. Let's put it that way.
A widening vertical. Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, I think like we maybe get so caught up in this idea that one person is supposed to save the world that we forget that we actually each have our role to play. When we look at nature, we look at a healthy ecology. Like a tree is not trying to be the best tree, the number one tree, the tree that rules all the trees. It's just a tree. Mm-hmm. And what makes a healthy ecology is a diverse ecology where everyone is just doing their part. Right. And so what I often try to do is to figure out, like, am I doing my part with the skills and knowledge that I have available to me? And if not, what can I acquire? What skills can I acquire to do that better?
And I would say you've done a great job of that. You've roped in so many major players, from commercial brands to major foundations to institutions like the UN wanting to be adjacent to the work, right? And have to be at the center of what they're looking to advance in terms of policy.
It's funny because like, I think as the person living the journey, and I'm sure you can relate to this, the stories that everyone else sees from the outside, the highlight reel just feels a little different, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I'm reminded of that though, every time, we do a podcast like this. So you go up on stage and you present the best, most impactful moments of your entire career. It sounds really impressive. But
right.
The day-to-day is actually like,
it's terrible. It's terrible. People don't know what the groundwork really looks like. That brings me to another question I wanted to ask you, because you started out well known for photography. You just said that you had 10,000 organic followers on Facebook back in the day. And you started to integrate more and more activism into fantasy photography. Is that fair to say over time?
Yeah, it took a little bit of time. So from 2012 to 2015, I wasn't trying to be an activist. I was just trying to do cool work. I was trying to survive as an artist, and I was curious to know what that meant. So I went from 10,000 followers to 350,000 followers over the course of that short time frame. And I was doing all sorts of crazy stunts. I was known for like tying a model underwater in a shipwreck in Bali and doing a photo shoot there, or lighting someone on fire, or dangling them off of a rooftop. Like I was doing these stunts, I was documenting them on YouTube, and then I was just sharing them out for free. And along the way, I started doing a bunch of brand collaborations with different organizations and groups. And then in 2015, I ended up getting a couple of large commercial campaigns. So basically in 2015, I earned more money in that year than my entire career combined. And I was like, whoa, I think I've made it. Like, this is what it means to be a successful commercial photographer. It was like almost like peaking on top of that hill. And I was like, I don't like it.
You didn't feel successful?
No, it just felt boring. Like, what do you do? What was I doing? I was basically creating cool art so that I could get paid, so that I could get more followers, so that I could create more cool things. It was cool, but it felt kind of empty. It felt a little like repetitive because you were just like skinning the same approach onto like different brands. And all you were really doing was moving product off of a shelf. And that made me wonder, well, like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I don't think this is it. I gave myself a date and I'm like, from this point forward, I'm going to not say yes to any commercial projects unless there's some kind of an impactful thing. And I knew for a fact that like things that made a difference in the world were the kind of thing that fed my soul, because I had some experience just doing a couple like charitable projects in my time. One thing that I did was in the house of a stranger who was looking to make a viral video for their little daughter who was dying of a terminal degenerative brain disease called Sanfilippo syndrome. Basically, by the age of 6 years old, you slowly start to lose the ability to walk, talk, speak until you die in your teenage years. And they were like, if only we had like a viral video, maybe we could make a difference. And I got like a cold email from them, and I ended up flying over, staying on their sofa, making a video. Within a month, we raised $1 million. By the end of the year, we raised $2 million. She ended up being the first person to receive a first clinical trial of a potential, not cure, but like a potential treatment. And now I'm on the board of their foundation. And, that was such a great experience to say like, oh my gosh, like we became the most funded campaign on GoFundMe at the time. This was back in 2013. And I was like, wow, this is the power of storytelling, right? You can move people, you can make a difference. Yeah. I was like, how do I do more of that?
Right.
And so like in 2015, I kind of just danced around. I was like, do I want to do documentary films? No, it's so depressing all the time. Like, do I want to do other things? How do I combine fantasy? And then I just started like watching a bunch of documentaries, just trying to figure out like what are issues in the world and how can I use that same strategy and apply it into impact. And it was an experiment. This was right around the time Facebook video was going live. And so we had a Facebook video strategy. And so one of the projects that I did was to go storm chasing to raise awareness for climate change. So we use storms as a metaphor for climate change. Chase these storms rushing at 50 miles an hour with an ambulance. And then we use the ambulance as storage to like take a bunch of stuff out and like take photos of people ignoring this giant tornado that's going on. Yeah. We went and tied a model underwater with some sharks swimming around for shark conservation because I already knew how to do photo shoots underwater. And then finally, the thing that really kind of blew up my environmental career was when I decided to put a mermaid on 10,000 plastic bottles. And that became like one of the most viral series at the time. I think I had like 36 million views on the Facebook video alone, but it's spread far and wide on the internet. And you can't track the impact of art, but I got newspaper clippings from people like in Taiwan, and I'm like, wait, how did it get there? And it was just like a really fun period in time where I was like, okay, I guess I'm an environmentalist now. And
does that resonate with you even today? You said, I guess I'm an environmentalist now. Is that part of your identity? Or you're like, yeah, kind of. Just where I said, artist and activist.
Yeah,
like, I am these things, but that's not all of who I am.
No, I like that you picked that up because at the time, and for most of that time frame, so 2016 to like 2021-ish, I became an environmentalist, not kind of like unwillingly, begrudgingly.
Because of the connotation around it? Or
No. It's just because like I never, like, so when you're an influencer, what do? You are basically traveling the world, doing cool things, collaborating with brands, and promoting all the cool, extravagant things that you're doing.
Right.
And when you start learning about the impact of all these things, you start feeling guilty for literally everything that you do. And so when you make that transition from being a normal human to being an environmentalist, I found it to be a very annoying thing because I didn't grow up as an environmentalist. I didn't grow up like having a deep connection to nature. I grew up actually fairly poor in the city, and we didn't really have a lot of nature time. So I never like bonded with nature. And so the initial phases of my environmental journey actually came from a place of duty. Like, I would do things because it felt like I should. Like after I did the climate change project, I was like, all right, well, got to change one thing in my life. I'm going to go vegetarian. And then I went from vegetarian to vegan. And then I was like, oh crap, I did a plastic thing. Now I can't use plastics anymore. And then like, I just kept feeling increasingly guilty.
It's the burden of awareness, really.
The burden of awareness. Yeah. And that actually almost burned me out because it just felt like nothing you did was ever enough. Mm-hmm. And actually had a whole chapter where I had to really stare and reckon with my relationship with being an environmentalist and figure out like how I wanted to be in relation to myself. And I think the shortest articulation of what that is I had to transition from a relationship to my work of activism to shift it from a place of duty into a place of love. Because when things come from a place of duty, you get thrown these really harsh words like you should do this, you ought to do this, you must do this because there is an inevitable catastrophe awaiting you that's going to come in, collapse entire civilization. If you don't do this thing, you're going to be a terrible person, right? Like it's this weight that's on you. Mm-hmm. And I think love comes at it from a very different direction, which is where like, oh, I feel so lucky that I have an opportunity to show up for this thing that I care about. What a gift that I may play and dance with the world and try my best knowing that nothing I do will be perfect, but I'm going to try anyways.
Absolutely.
And I was getting really like that weight of burden was really weighing on me. And so I actually had to work on building a relationship to the thing that I was trying to protect.
Do you think that's part of the reason why maybe some people are sitting on the sidelines versus getting involved?
Generally, humans are like creatures of comfort. Like we find a thing that works for us and it's hard to change. I also think that it is really easy. There's like a frame that I've been using. It comes from, I think it was from Nate Higgins or Daniel Schmachtenberger anyways, but it's like a frame which says like people are kind of broadly split into like 3 categories at the moment. There are folks in like the pre-tragic world, the folks in the tragic, and the folks in the post-tragic. If you're in the pre-tragic world, you think that the systems are working for us. We just need to work hard, put our heads down. The American dream, it's not perfect, but like broadly speaking, if you work, you're going to be rewarded. And then there are the folks who are in the tragic world who are like, oh my gosh, this is not what I thought the world was going to be. I see the world breaking down. Like all the systems that said they were going to protect us are not really doing their job. What the hell? And that's a lot of the spaces in which people start feeling really overwhelmed and they get shut down and they don't know what to do and they get really frustrated. And so they either like shift towards apathy or they shift towards hedonism or they shift towards nihilism. And that's like a really, really hard place to be. And then there's the folks in the post-tragic world who are like, all right, everything's breaking. What can I do about it? Right. And that's where you like reclaim a sense of empowerment. And you're like, okay, I know that like things are not the way they are, but I don't want to turn away any longer. I want to like look at it, absorb it, internalize it, and figure out how to adapt to it.
Right.
And I think that's a journey that, thanks to many factors. I mean, like the rise of social media, but also like the politicization of America, like regardless if you're on the right or the left, sort of decline of American hegemony, like sort of there are all these different factors that are like, I think over the last 5-10 years have really shifted many people from the pre-tragic to the tragic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you feel that a lot in like the Gen Z generation who are just like, what is going on? Like, what am I going to do once I get out of university? Right. There's like a lot of that fear and frustration. And I think what I hope to do with my work and what I'm trying to do with my community here in New York is like helping steward that energy and moving it into like a post-tragic world, which is like, this is also, with every crisis comes opportunity. And like, it is really frustrating if you're just trying to play by the rules. Because then you're trying to like basically live within a structure that is failing. And you're like, wait a minute, like all these promises that were made don't really work. But then what can you do after there? And I think as an artist, maybe I feel more ready to adapt to it, primarily because I've really just invented my entire life. Like I don't actually fall into any system or
well, it's in your DNA. You've had so many cycles of evolution and reinvention, and it's kind of like this creation destruction cycle it's part of your DNA.
Yeah. So like AI can't replace me because I'm not even sure what I am.
And it doesn't know either.
It doesn't know. I'm such an anomaly on the edge of the bell curve.
Enigma.
Yeah.
The distinction between, let's say, creating a following versus creating a community, right? It's very different.
Audience versus community, yeah.
Right. And that distinction, I think, is something that's even more important right now to outline for people, because there's a real polarity, especially in America, but we're also seeing it around the globe. Now, knowing that you're building out Meta Crisis, right? The salon here in New York with people who are like-minded and are looking at what is now a tragic / post-tragic world, depending on your point of view. Talk to me a little about this community, who's joining, what the goals and objectives are, and where you're headed next.
Yeah, for sure. So to rewind a second and talk about like the difference between audience and community. I think that, people on Instagram, even brands, like they like to say that they're building community, but really they're just looking for generally an audience to sell something to.
Yeah.
And so those are like essentially really weak ties that are kind of fragile.
They're fickle and they'll move on to somebody else.
Yeah. Like, and I think that's why we see so much flakiness, even though people are connected to more things than they've ever been connected to in the past. They feel alone. Community itself is something that's like kind of hard to find. And I think community means different things to many different people. I think I'm also still in this moment trying to define like what exactly is the community that I'm trying to build. But I think in that, community is a general idea of intentional gathering with specific subset of values and a general theme that you gather around with a sense of regularity. And so the salons that we're doing, we've actually like folded it under this banner called Dear Crisis, which I kind of thought was kind of cute. So dearcrisis.com. And so once a month right now, we host these things called Meta Crisis salons. There are these fully sold out events that happen on a Saturday night, competing with literally everything in Manhattan. 65 people coming together. We community cook a meal around like 4 p.m. And at 6 p.m., like 65 people show up. And then we eat together and we have speakers and we have all these opportunities for people to connect with one another. And I like to think of it as a space where we can sit in discomfort. Because I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on where like you wake up in the morning, you look at the news, you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe this thing is happening. And then like you go out to the bar, to some cool like salon and you're like,
this isn't happening.
How's it going?
Right, it's not happening.
Just like ignoring everything. Like we're kind of running away from it. Like we're just chasing like the dopamine band-aid rather than actually facing things. And I think having a space to be uncomfortable and to not know feels really important in this moment in time. And we have about like 30 to 40% recurring attendees. We're on our 11th salon that's happening this Saturday. If you're free, cool. And so that's what we're doing with like the Meta Crisis Salon. We tackle different aspects of the Meta Crisis. The fact that we live in a moment in time where we have all these deeply interconnected crises, sometimes referred to as the polycrisis, which means that you can't solve, for example, homelessness without solving education, without solving democracy, without solving environmentalism. Like, there are all these interconnected issues, and that's why all these efforts to solve them in silos don't actually work. And then the meta crisis piece of the polycrisis, so the meta piece, the metacognition piece, is like, how are all these tropes that we are living by perpetuating these systems and causing them to be this way, right? Like, it's not because people are bad, it's because the systems are bad, and the systems are designed to sort of like maximize profit and take advantage of the weakest aspects of our humanity. I think so many people right now, so much of the work and so much of my previous work actually has been trying to figure out how we tweak this system and make it work for people. Mm-hmm. I created this series not because I know what to do, but rather because I don't know what to do. And by creating it, I'm hoping that the folks that want to continue asking this question and maybe offer different solutions. You know, there's a real thirst, like you said, especially for those that are in this space of what are we going to do about AI? What are we going to do about climate change? What are we going to do about mass migration? It's, you know, these are big questions to very big problems. Yeah. You know, on the flip side of that, like you said, opportunities to come together and figure them out. Opportunities. So arts and culture, right? It's such a pillar of our society. It has been for thousands of years. Yeah. Where do you see its role? I think the role of the arts, and maybe it's too bold to say like the role of the arts per se, because I'm really just one artist with one specific strategy. It's okay, be bold. Go for it. Okay. Blow our minds. In like big chapters of history, the arts played this outsized role in like galvanizing people and galvanizing movements in order to create the bedrock for change, either through music, through pictures, through monuments, through songs. And like, authoritarian governments do this very well. Like, look at the art from the times of the Soviet Union. It's iconic. Look at Communist Party art. It's iconic. It's got a look, it's got a feel, and it's got like the sense of national identity imbued in it all. Mm-hmm. And when we look at this moment in time and we're like, what do we have to show for this generation? We have Instagram videos and like little cool swipey attention grabby stuff. And right now that's all being flooded by artificial intelligence. And I think that there's the aspiration of what art could do, and there's what art is actually doing. And I think right now we have a world in which the only way to kind of make a living as an artist is to do kind of like either advertising, marketing, entertainment. To really lean heavily into the commercial. Yeah. Or you're doing art, but you're really, to make a career as an artist, you really have to be good at like schmoozing at like the Art Basels of the world or whatever it happens to be. So you're still pandering to a class of like rich people who have their own ideas of what makes good art. But don't you think with social media though, with just having access to this global audience, that maybe it's become a little bit easier for artists to make a career? I think there are more pathways to making money. I don't know if making money and creating art is the same as like surviving and thriving. So there is almost like this dance that needs to happen, but I don't think the artist can do it alone. I think it's maybe, it's actually a problem that isn't just solely limited to the arts themselves. It's all the fields need to figure out how to work together more often and explore what cross-sector collaborations look like. And the work that I do tries to do that, right? Like, I work with local communities, I fuse that with global policymakers, and I bring an art lens into this with multiple formats of storytelling. The videos that we make to explain who we worked with, why we did it, what matters about it. There's the art installation, which anyone can interact with, create their own content on top of, if they have a phone, if they have their video teams, if they have whatever. And then I have my own set of photos that tells its own story, right? So we're creating like layers of information, layers of way to engage. Does it change anything? It's really hard to say. I don't know, but I'd say it does, right? I mean, first step is awareness. Once you know, you can't look away. Maybe, right? Maybe. You know, when we talk about measurement, I think we're a society that's obsessed with measurement and data. Sort of like an absurdity to thinking that you can measure everything and model it out and predict everything from that point forward. God forbid. God forbid you could measure everything. Art, advocacy, and impact. And, you know, there is this perception that, well, it lives out in the ether. It's not something which is tangible. Yeah. And so I'm personally not someone who believes in that. I think there's a
beautiful marriage between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely the tangible
Right.
outcomes that come with art advocacy, and there's definitely something which just lives in the mind, heart, and spirit of people once they interact with the work itself.
Yeah, it's totally similar. Like we obviously have our indicators, so the number of measured impressions connected to the piece of art. It's like, oh, this thing got X billions of impressions, or this piece of art was placed in this place, which attracted 10,000 people per day over the course of 2 weeks, or this thing created. We redistributed money to like 100 different community members that contributed to making this happen, so that we can tell our donors and our funders that actually like the money that you gave us was just recirculated back into the economy, which is another form of service. And in doing that service, we actually managed to create these artifacts that are now, like I have this one piece, the Thinker's Burden, which is actually going to go to Sudbury. It's going to tour for 5 years.
Wow.
It's going to go across museums across the globe. And so for these donors who gave like checks of like $10,000, $20,000, they get to say that not only did they have a piece that was at the global plastic treaty negotiations in Geneva that got this many impressions over this point of time, it's actually now going to travel and tour and impact kids for this additional length of time. And for them, it feels really good to know that like, oh, art has all these different ways of communicating, the tangible, the intangible. And I'm not giving them like a report in the same way you give a sales report, but I think it's a story that I think people buy into.
We do know over time that, art and policy have intersected at many points, right? With your own work in Geneva, with the Thinker's Burden, was something which received a lot of acclaim and a lot of eyes on it, as well as people who came to visit and interact with the work. And now it's being toured, and it's an opportunity for even more people and kids to engage and learn more about the environment and what's actually happening in the global policy space. Beyond awareness, we do see results and outcomes, but it tends to have a bit of a lag.
Yep. No,
that's what it is.
And once again, we're part of an ecology of change. And so I think even when someone says like, my film changed this, that's not actually true. It's your film in collaboration with a whole bunch of people that have been working on this issue for a whole lot of time. We have the intersection of popular movement making, policy, and all of it. Like it all comes together.
Right.
And it's kind of sad that we need to like constantly focus on like, I did this thing so that I can attract funding, or so that I can get support that I need. But I think for anyone who's like looking at the whole picture and who's like taking the time to like not just make it about their ego, you really see that it's just pieces, all pieces of a giant puzzle, a giant project for like, how do we make the best of this moment in time, and how do we right the wrongs of the past, and how do we do the best we can moving forward?
Exactly.
Right?
Let me ask you, with the arts, right, and maybe with creative practice, in the hierarchy of systemic change, where do you think it sits? Is it maybe the spark? Is it the accelerator? It's somewhere in between that maybe spreads the word and activates the system, activates communities? Or is it, let's say, the monument where it's sitting at that top and there's this sort of permanence to it?
Yeah. I mean, I guess art can be anything, right? Like in the little gatherings that we do, which are very small, we always try to have moments of somatic gathering. We actually had Jacob Collier drop by our last salon, and I was just like tapped him and I'm like, can you have a moment to bring us together in a moment of coherence? Because I think there's so much dissonance in the world and we feel very fragmented and fractured. And, we went up on the rooftop, and his opening sentence is so funny. Like, I think a third of the room knew who he was, but like there were 2/3 of the room who had no idea what they had signed up for. We just like moved everyone on the roof. And he starts off by saying like, the last time that I did this was like, he's like, I don't know when the last time I performed in front of such a small audience was, but I'm going to try something that I think will work on you guys. I just did it in front of 60,000 people in the Yankee Stadium. I was like, great. We're a little crowd, like 60 people here. It's great. And that was such it was like a definitive highlight of the moment, even though we had like a phenomenal speaker come in and talk about geoengineering risk and all this other stuff. But like that moment of just like being in communities together, connected, synchronized, and feeling what it meant to actually feel a sense of coherence in a world that is constantly discoherent is powerful.
Yeah.
Is it measurable? I don't know. Like I don't have an indicator of that. And but yet like you can tell and you can know and you can ask people, you can survey it, and then there are the like larger moments of coherence where I think like my work aspires to do that, because when you bring a giant piece of art, so for the UN Biodiversity Conference, I created a 2.5 story tall biodiversity Jenga tower where each and every block was a different ecosystem. And on the top of this Jenga tower that was looking kind of janky. There were sculptures of 3 kids sitting on the top of it to show that we're not separate from nature, we're a part of nature. You know, that piece was a similar moment of coherence because it didn't matter if you were from the for-profit sector, the nonprofit sector, the government sector. You were there creating content in front of this. This was the icon, the monument that you walked past every single day in order to talk about why you were here, why it was important, and what you thought needed to happen from there. I'm not there to tell you who's right or wrong, who's the most impactful or not most impactful, but I wanted to give everyone the chance to be like, hey, this is a snapshot of what is true in this moment and the opportunity we have to restabilize this tower that like all life depends on. Right. So like, let's get on with it. And I think that's what's so fun about art is that art is not prescriptive. It is not telling you what to think or what to do. It is inviting you into a conversation. Marketing is telling you what to do, right? It's like buy this thing or do things this way, right? But art is this invitation that's a lot broader.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's so great, like you said about the arts, is that perhaps it gives the audience more agency.
Yeah.
Right. Invites them in. And it's like, you can do whatever you want with this, right? You're invited into the space. You can have a dialogue with us around this piece or whatever you're encountering in terms of a creative work. And you can walk away and do with it what you will. Do you see artists right now out there in the world with this appetite to get out there and to engage in activism?
I don't only see artists, I see everyone wanting to engage more with the world. And I think everyone doesn't really know how. And there's this funny convergence because the job market is so unstable right now. And there's a lot of fear and anxiety around like rising costs of living, inflation, you know, all this stuff. And just like a rapidly changing world where you're just like, I don't know how to fit in. Mm-hmm. And so that is rising in addition to like saying, I don't know how to contribute. And I think this is the opportunity for us to actually get really good at not knowing. Because we've lived in a world that was like very stable, very structured, very systemic. It's like the post-World War II, like global world order that was like America first, capitalism first, market economies first. And everything was designed to be as predictable and safe as possible. And if you could play by those rules, you knew you were going to get like a good thing, right? Like go to school, get an MBA, work at a top 5, big 5, whatever, get a tech job, It's like very linear.
Right.
And now we're no longer in a linear system, right? It's becoming increasingly complex, increasingly convoluted. And I think it starts with being more like an artist, being more capable of playing with the unknown, of focusing on process rather than outcome, right? What does it look like to actually think about like, what gives me a curiosity to explore the unknown? How do I show up and experiment and play and feel safe? You know, who can I do that with? And I think if we come up with processes that allow us to feel more comfortable in the unknown, we actually start thinking a lot more differently because we're not just spending our day applying for jobs that have no feedback loops, that algorithm is just deciding and choosing whether or not we're worthy of it. It's like, there's a robot on the other side you can't even see that's making a decision about your entire life and your potential. It's like kind of bullshit. And I understand that some people have to do that and that's fine. It's not a criticism of it all, but like in the midst of all of that, I think also reminding ourselves that there is so much richer, so much more to life than what is currently in front of us that is being offered to us that we even know we're capable of doing. And so what does it look like to tap into that entire realm of the unknown in a way that recharges us rather than drains us?
Right. So it's the beauty of the meta crisis.
It is. Yeah. And that's where the opportunities are. There are so many opportunities. We just can't see them yet. How do we start dancing with these ideas more?
So I think coming out of the community work and looking ahead at what's part of your next body of work, what are you thinking about? What is that piece waiting to be born?
Yeah.
It's keeping you up at night.
So on the art side, well, it's not keeping me up at night. I'm excited about it.
With excitement. I don't mean in terms of worry and anxiety, but I mean, I can't wait to create this thing.
Yeah. So on the art side, I've actually taken a little bit of a pause from a lot of the global plastic treaty and global environmental treaty stuff because I'm looking at the global world order. And I'm like, I don't know if this UN model of consensus is really super durable in this current chapter of civilization that we're headed in. I think it's a moment of time in which things are going to become more fragmented. We can barely coordinate within a country, let alone globally. So I'm like putting a little pause on that and thinking a little bit more domestically. And I think when I look at the United States as a whole, there are a couple issues that I'm starting to be really excited about, which is democracy and artificial intelligence as like two fields to really try to affect and play with. It isn't so much an anti-AI stance or a pro-AI stance, which I think is like people are expected to be like pro-AI, anti-AI or pro-regulation, anti-regulation. I actually think the simplest frame around it all is like AI is coming in too fast and we need to slow it down. As simple as that.
Right.
And how we do that should be done in a way that enables us to build collective power. And what that looks like for me and the way I create work, I go out into the world. I try to be the dumbest person in the room in spaces and places where I can learn the most. And out of that space of listening and learning and understanding, I try to create ideas and concepts that feel resonant and interesting. And so I'm going to the largest labor conference in the US next month in Chicago. It's called Labor Notes. And what I'm going there for is I'm hoping to understand how power is built within labor movements, because I think,
that's the first thing you need to tackle.
That's one of the most interesting things is how do we actually build power back, especially inviting like white collar workers that have traditionally not been unionized back into that structure. And what would it look like to modernize that entire structure? What are they paying attention to? How are they organizing? What are they paying attention to? In that same vein, AI is like, oddly enough, in the United States, a super divisive issue. It's not actually that divisive in South America, in Africa, in Asia. It's actually, most people are actually quite pro AI. But in the US, there's so little trust, I think, because of how much social media screwed everyone up. And I guess because we have the levers of control here, whereas the rest of the world is used to not being in control for what happened. There's like, oh, the US is doing the US things and we're just going to adapt to it accordingly. Right. There are those that want innovation and technology at all costs without thinking about the externalities, the environmental consequences, the human consequences. We just want to develop this because it's going to solve everything utopically. And then there's everyone else who's feeling kind of left behind.
Or really just unsure, right? They're a little skeptical.
I don't know.
I think so. I mean, even those that are so pro AI
are still unsure, right?
They're still unsure. We don't really know.
Yeah.
Right? Until we're there, we don't really know.
Right. I agree. And I think everyone is feeling like it's coming on a little too fast. It's too quick. It's too irresponsible. And that means that if you have a swath of people who are red, blue, old, young, white collar, blue collar, who are all feeling uncomfortable, what does it look like to coordinate that? And so I want to figure out that piece of it. And so overall, I'm kind of just trying to figure out like who needs large, obnoxious pieces of art to build symbolism within a movement.
Who doesn't?
Well, it's actually a really specific skill set. Most people don't need it. But if you know anyone, or if you are someone who needs a large, obnoxious art to move people forward, to galvanize people, please let me know. I mean, like super interested.
To reach out to.
Yeah, I'm always interested to connect with people.
Well, I think we need more of that, especially in physical spaces, right? Because so much is living in this digital sphere that we're not really connecting with these monumental works, especially the ones that you produce at scale. And I think there's something about being confronted in a physical space, even just looking at some of the photographs of the work you have here. And I know what you produce in Geneva. That's a very different relationship with the work, with the challenge, with the state of things as they are. On TikTok or on Instagram or Facebook, you're there for 10 seconds, you scroll away and you've forgotten about it. Where if you're drawn into a space, that's when it's like, hey, you know what? This challenge is as physical, as real as what's standing in front of me. I got to do something about this.
Yeah.
And that's where that sense of agency comes from.
And it hits everyone differently. Some people have that exact reaction. I remember people coming up to me. They'll come up to me and be like, I've come to this thing every single day because it's reminding me like why I'm here.
Yeah.
And then there are other people who you just look at them and they just like, they walk straight by. and that's fine. Because it's not going to hit everyone the same way.
Right. So with the Thinker's Burden, and I know you had done a piece in Nairobi and maybe you were...
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
So the first art installation that I made for the Global Plastics Treaty was this like 4-story tall giant faucet spewing plastics all over the environment. And it was kind of perfect because at the time, everyone was talking about how important it was to turn off the plastic tap. It was like so successful that the UN ended up adopting it as like a symbol on the cover of their plastics report. So really like within the world of the UN Plastics Treaty, like this is the one thing that everyone knows. And so it would have been very easy to take the same thing and just like plop it back down and do it one more time. But one, that's boring, and
that's not who you are.
Yeah, I like to try new things. And I think, you know, the symbol had actually become quite contentious over the course of a couple of years, where the less ambitious countries were trying to rephrase the problem. Instead of saying turn off the plastic tap on plastic production, it became turn off the plastic tap on plastic pollution, which is very different. It means that we want to keep producing as much as we possibly can, we just need to make sure that none of it like flows away and leaks into the ocean. But like all the science, all the experts, all the like civil society is just like, there is no way of reducing the volume of crap that's leaking all over the place if you're only going to double and triple production over the course of the next 20, 30 years. And yet, like, that was like a story that's already been told many times, and we wanted to tell a different story. So that's why we had a sculpture of the thinker holding a plastic bottle in one hand and a baby in the other, thinking about the next generation, sitting on top of a sculpture of Mother Earth with a giant strand of DNA wrapped around. And the giant strand of DNA was to talk about how all the chemicals and the nanoplastic and the microplastics that are used to make all of these plastics and these endocrine disrupting chemicals are like actually entering our bodies,
breaking it down.
And actually it's like, it can be passed on through the womb, through the uterus to the next generation. Like it's happening. Like, and we all have plastics in our blood, in our bodies, in our brains, in our hearts. And this is like only getting worse, only getting more concentrated over time. And so I was like, that feels like the better story. And what we actually ended up doing on top of that was like, as the negotiations went on every single day, we added more and more plastics to the sculpture to show the rising cost of inaction, because we're just sitting there thinking, right, what do we do?
What do we do about
this? Is such a big problem. What do we do? And then we're not doing anything. And so that was like the intention of the piece. So the piece actually evolved from just being a static piece to kind of a little bit more of a performative piece. The other big thing that changed between those two is like, I've started thinking a lot about how might we actually think about art that can travel into the future. So that's something that I really thought about. So this one could be broken down. It could be put into a container ship. It could be shipped off to somewhere else so that it could move and travel and have a life after its creation, which wasn't the case for my earlier work, simply because I didn't have either the resources or the connections to make it happen. And so that's something that we try to tell our donors, our supporters, our funders that like, hey, although our first priority is to like make it happen here for this important critical moment in time, we will always try to like figure out a way of like placing it so that it can continue having an impact for the rest of its life, right? Like that's the ideal goal.
Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to join this conversation. This has been really a tour de force episode for us. So besides going to dearcrisis.com, where else can they find you and learn more what's coming next?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you just go to vonwong.com, VONWONG, you can just stumble across all my work. Every single product has a video that shows how it's done.
Cool.
There are photos there, blog posts, just about everything. And then, of course, social media would be at Von Wong, or just Google my name and you'll find me there. But yeah, if you want to get in touch, I'm always excited to hear from new people so that we can figure out how we can protect this world that we live in.
Well said. We all should be striving to do that.
Yeah.
This is The Art of Impact. Thank you for listening.